Okay, in this area, we're going to look at negotiable instruments, the types of negotiable instruments, parties, transferring negotiable instruments, and liability. So we're dealing with Article 3 of the Uniform Commercial Code, and negotiable instruments are actually substitutes for cash. In order for an instrument to be negotiable, it has to be in writing. It has to be signed by the creator of the negotiable instrument. There has to be an unconditional promise to pay. And their words of negotiability have to be there, either order or bearer. And it has to be a some certain amount of money. It does not have to be dollars, but a some certain amount, like 300 is a some certain, you know the amount. And it has to be payable either at a specific time, like 6 months from the date of the instrument, or it has to be payable on demand when the party presents the instrument to be paid. Negotiability gives certain special rights. And again, we're under the Uniform Commercial Code, Article 3. And we're going to look at those particular rights under Article 3. So if the agreement or the instrument that you have does not meet the UCC negotiable instrument requirements, it can still be enforceable under contract law. And so you learned contract law and legal environment. Why is there a need for an instrument to be negotiable? Because using documents as a payment greatly facilitates commercial transactions. So people may not always have cash, but the ability to be able to use a substitute for cash, like a check, it makes it easier to engage in commercial transactions. So again, there are 7 elements of negotiability. The first thing is you have to have an evidence of a record or writing, and any record is acceptable. The second element is that there has to be a signature, or it has to be authenticated by the maker or the drawer of the instrument. And we'll talk about what maker or drawer is in just a second. If you have a signature by an agent that is allowed, and in order for the agent to avoid individual liability, the agent has to disclose the principal and representative capacity on the face of the instrument. So it has to be clear that the party is an agent. So we'll see in just a second what an example of that actually is when we look at the type of instruments. Without that clear evidence of an agency relationship, the agent will be personally liable on the instrument. And an exception there is if a check is drawn on a principal's bank account. So if the principal has a bank account and that is the actual instrument, then the agent will not be personally liable because it's drawn on the principal's bank account. So again, you also have to have, again, in writing, it has to be signed. There cannot be a condition on payment, so it must be an unconditional promise or order to pay. And so the unconditional promise or order to pay, an example of a condition would be if the instrument said, I will promise to pay a party if I get a raise. That's a condition. If you have a condition, it will mean that it's non-negotiable or not negotiable. The other thing is it has to be payable in money. Again, it does not have to be dollars. There has to be a sum certain. You have to be able to determine what that amount of money actually is. It has to be payable on demand. So when I go to the bank and I present that check or cash that check, that's on demand. But you also can have an instrument that has a specific time. It may say 90 days from the date. That's fine for it to be one or the other. Parties again, and I'm going to try to go back to that a little bit on the slides, a little bit off. Let's go back to the parties that you actually have again, and it's a written promise to make that a maker makes to pay a sum certain amount of money to a payee. You have the maker and the payee, and this is an example of a promissory note here. And also there's an example of this instrument being signed by an agent. So let's look at it. It's a promise by the maker of the note to pay. And here you have, it's signed by John R. Haddlehan, but he's signing it as an agent of Video Arcade. So he's signing it in his representative capacity. So it's really Video Arcade. Video Arcade is the maker of the instrument, and it's promising to pay. And this is in writing. It's signed by an agent of Video Arcade on behalf of Video Arcade. And it says 6 months after the date. So it's signed for payment 6 months after the date on this instrument. And so what that means is this instrument is payable at a specific time. It says the undersigned hereby promises to pay to the order of Galactica Games. So the payee is Galactica Games. $3,600. So it is here some certain amount of money. And this note is secured by Video Arcade Games purchased with funds. That just means that this note is secured by collateral, so that if Video Arcade doesn't pay Galactica Games for these video games, Galactica Games can come back and take the video games. So the video games are collateral. That does not affect negotiability. We have all 7 elements because notice we also have the words of negotiability order. We have some certain amount of money, the $3,600. The fact that there's interest or that it's secured by video arcades or there's collateral does not affect the negotiability. Also, the agent can sign by initials. The agent doesn't need to sign the full signature like is what is done here. A certificate of deposit is actually a promise to pay that's issued by a bank, and so it is an example of a promissory note. And with the CD, a bank acknowledges the customer's deposit and promises to pay the customer the amount plus interest when the CD is surrendered. So that's an example of a promissory note. A draft is an order by one party to pay some certain amount of money to a second party. And so the draft is used as a means to obtain payment for goods delivered to the buyer. An example of a draft is actually a check. And a check is a specific draft drawn by the owner of a checking account ordering the bank to pay the payee from the drawer's account. This is an example of a draft here. Notice that it's signed by Joe Gilden on behalf of Silly Putty. In this case, you have Silly Putty is the actual drawer of the draft, and Joe Gilden is signed as an agent. And Silly Putty is ordering Oriental, which is the drawee, to pay to Silly Putty $1,000. And Oriental would sign this to accept it. But as far as this instrument, the type is a draft. A check is a special type of draft. This instrument is actually paid to the order of Silly Putty, and there's some certain amount. So you have, again, an example of the drawer being the payee. Like I said, if I write a check to myself, I'm the drawer and also the payee. This one there's no specific date, so it's payable on demand. So it's in writing, it's signed, it has the words of negotiability because order or bearer, the words of negotiability. There's some certain amount of money. There's no condition placed on payment. And this is payable on demand when it's presented by Silly Putty. So it's fine. A check, again, is an example of a draft, and it's an order by a depositor, payable on demand, and drawn on a credit union or bank to pay some certain amount of money to the order of the party or the payee. So the basic types of negotiable instruments. You have the drawer is the person who signs the order to pay. You have the drawee, the person to whom the order to pay is made. And then the person to whom payment is ordered is the payee. The promissory note, you have the maker who promises to pay. They promise to pay to the payee. A promissory note is a promise by one party to pay to another party. An example is a certificate of deposit. So this is just showing an example of of the instruments that I just discussed. So you have the notes again, and the promissory notes, the certificate of deposit, which is an example of a promissory note, the draft, and then the check is an example. So let's talk about the difference between bearer and order. So once you know you have a negotiable instrument, now you want to be able to transfer that instrument to make someone a holder. So how do you transfer, which is called negotiation? How do you negotiate that instrument? You negotiate the instrument depending on whether it's bearer or order paper. Pay to bearer is a bearer instrument. Pay to the order of John Jones means to pay to John Jones, who holds it, or whoever else holds it. Bearer holds it. So that is a bearer instrument, even though it has order in it. So you can't look at whether it has the words order in it to determine whether it's bearer. Pay to John Jones or bearer, that's a bearer instrument. Pay to cash or pay to the order of cash, it's going to be a bearer instrument. The pay to the order of Thomasina Jones, that is not going to be a bearer instrument. That's an order instrument because it's only to Thomasina Jones, not Thomasina Jones or bearer or whoever holds it. Pay to John Jones, comma bearer, that basically is different from or bearer, and sometimes students get that confused. Pay to John Jones, comma bearer means that the only bearer or holder of that instrument is John Jones. Pay to John Jones or bearer means that John Jones is the holder or whoever holds it or whoever bears the instrument. So pay to John Jones, comma bearer is order. Pay to Thomasina Jones is an order instrument because notice you don't have to use the words order with the check, even though the checks have it. If you had a note that said pay to Thomasina Jones, it would be non-negotiable because you don't have the words order or bearer. And remember, in order to have a negotiable instrument, you have to have order or bearer there in that instrument, unless it's a check. That's the difference here. So negotiation is transferring an instrument from person to person to person and making them a holder. How do you make somebody a holder of an instrument? So we've been looking at the front of the instrument or the face of the instrument. In order to make somebody a holder of the instrument, it has to be made payable to the person, or it has to be, like if you write a check payable to Mark Fleming, that is payable to me. So I'm a holder. But it also can be made, you can also make someone a holder by endorsing an instrument over to that person or having a blank endorsement. So endorsements come on the back of the instrument. So if there was a check that I wanted to transfer to someone that was made payable to me, it said pay to Mark Fleming, but I wanted to transfer it to someone, give it to someone in order to make them a holder, I could endorse on the back, the endorsements on the back, the check over to the person, or I could leave a blank endorsement, which means that I've just signed my name. So blank endorsement makes the instrument, if that's the only or last endorsement, it makes the instrument bearer. And any instrument that is bearer, whoever holds that instrument as a general rule becomes a holder of the instrument, as long as they didn't steal the instrument. So negotiation depends on whether you have a bearer order. So it's determined by the words of negotiability on the instrument, or it can be determined by the endorsement on the back of the instrument. So if an instrument is bearer, in order to negotiate it, all you have to do is deliver the instrument. So that is one way of actually transferring or negotiating the instrument, just delivering the instrument. And it can be actually like if I handed the check over to someone and the check was made payable to me, but I handed it over to someone with a blank endorsement on the back, or I actually signed it over, that's actual delivery. Or if someone found a bearer instrument, that is constructive delivery of that instrument. And so that's sufficient. Bearer paper is negotiated to a person taking possession of it, whether or without regard to whether the possession was lawful. Although a thief cannot transfer, or a thief will not get become a holder in the instrument, but a person who gets it from someone who is a thief that doesn't know about it can become a holder of a bearer instrument. Order instruments are transferred with not only delivery, and delivery means possession of the instrument, but also endorsement. So you have to have delivery and endorsement of the instrument. So for example, a order instrument would be pay to the order of Elliot Goldspeed. That is the holder of that instrument is Elliot Goldseal. So that instrument is order. So in order for Elliot to transfer that instrument to make someone a holder, he would have to either on the back make a blank endorsement or pay it over to another party. But he's a holder because it's payable to him. Right now, he's the only holder of that instrument. But you want to know with negotiation, how do you transfer that instrument, give that instrument to someone else and make them a holder? In order to do that here, Elliot would have to transfer possession of the instrument, deliver the instrument to someone, and there would have to be an endorsement or a signature. An endorsement is within I. Bearer versus order. Again, you got to know these. And I've gone over them before, but it's not just the words. So, for example, pay to the order of John Jones or bearer is a bearer instrument, even though it has order in it. Because what that means is pay to the order of John Jones or whoever bears it. But notice pay to John Jones, comma bearer, whoever comes before that comma is going to be the holder of that instrument. So that is actually an order instrument, which means you need both delivery and endorsement to negotiate that instrument or transfer holder of the instrument. So you can convert an instrument from order to bearer and vice versa with your endorsements. So the method used for negotiation depends on the character of the instrument at the time the negotiation takes place. So an example, a check originally made payable to cash, which would, based on the face of that instrument, would be bearer. But if it's on the back endorsed pay to Arnold, that would actually be an order instrument because it's called a special endorsement. It is a special endorsement. Paid to Arnold is a special endorsement, and a special endorsement, if that's the only or last endorsement, is an order. So you can change a bearer instrument to an order instrument by using a special endorsement on the back of that instrument. So an instrument payable to the order of a specific payee, for example, if it says pay to the order of Peter Thomas on the front of the instrument, you can change that order instrument to a bearer instrument if Peter Thomas just signs it on the back, which is called a blank endorsement. So you can convert an instrument back and forth between order and bearer with the endorsements. An endorsement is required whenever the instrument is being negotiated as an order instrument. So you will need an endorsement to make someone a holder of an order instrument. So again, if a check is made payable to Mark Fleming, in order for me to give someone or negotiate that instrument to make them a holder, on the back I have to endorse that. I have to either use a blank endorsement, which is just my signature, or I have to make it payable to a specific party, which would be a special endorsement. An endorsement, again, is a signature, and it does not have to have order or bearer in the endorsement. It could just be a signature, or it could be to a specific person, which would be a special endorsement. So again, a blank endorsement is just the signature of the endorser. If the last endorsement is blank, the instrument will be bearer, which means that negotiation can be done just by transfer. So example, if the signature on the back is John Doe, this instrument is a bearer instrument and it will be characterized as a blank endorsement. This is an example on the back of the instrument. Just the signature of Alan Parker is a blank endorsement, and it's also a bearer instrument because the blank endorsement is the only endorsement. A special endorsement is made out to a specific party. So if you have, for example, John Doe, comma, paid to Jane Doe. So what that means is it's made payable to Jane Doe, assigned by John Doe. This is a special endorsement because the only person who it's actually endorsed over to is Jane Doe, she's the only holder. If the last endorsement is a special endorsement or it's the only endorsement on the instrument, that instrument will be order, which means it needs an endorsement and also delivery to negotiate this instrument. So as this instrument is written, paid to Jane Doe, signed by John Doe, when Jane Doe gets it, in order for her to give it to someone else to make it a holder, she has to deliver that instrument to that person, and she also has to sign it, because right now she's the only holder of this instrument with a special endorsement. Again, a special endorsement can convert a blank endorsement a holder can convert a blank endorsement over to a special endorsement by putting if you have a blank endorsement, just the signature, if you were to put a pay to a specific party over that, you would make it a special endorsement. So for example, a check is made payable to Hal Cohen. If he endorses it with a blank endorsement on the back and then he negotiates it to William Hunter, William Hunter is a holder just by delivery because it's a blank endorsement. If Hunter puts on top of Cohen's signature pay to William Hunter, by putting that pay to William Hunter has made this a special endorsement, which means this is an order instrument above that blank endorsement. So he's changed the character of the instrument. This is an example of a special endorsement. Pay to Tom Halton. Marcia L. Diaz has signed it. So the only holder right now would be Tom Halton. So if he wanted to transfer this instrument, he'd have to deliver it and also endorse it by either a special endorsement to the person he's delivering it to, or by signing Tom Halton. A qualified endorsement eliminates the secondary liability of the endorser to answer for dishonor of the paper. So basically, if you put without recourse, whoever signs, like Jane Doe, without recourse, Jane Doe is signing it, basically saying that she's not liable if whoever's supposed to pay on the instrument does not pay on that instrument. So it's called a qualified endorsement, and without recourse is an example of a qualified endorsement. So this is another example, without recourse, Diana Morris. So if the party who is on the front that has signed this instrument, let's say it's a check, does not have the funds to pay, Diana Morris will not be responsible to whoever she transferred this instrument to, because she put without recourse. Now this is still a blank endorsement. This is a blank qualified endorsement. So the qualified endorsement doesn't change the fact that it is a blank endorsement. A restrictive endorsement specifies the purpose of the endorsement or the use to be made of the instrument. So if it says Sal Smith for deposit only, that means the only thing that can be done here is this instrument can be deposited. That's the only thing that can be done. Restrictive endorsement here for deposit only, signed E.L. Martin. So this is a blank restrictive endorsement because you only have E.L. Martin's signature. A payee may endorse an instrument with a misspelled name, with the correct name, or with the incorrect spelling, or both spellings. So if my name is spelled M-A-R-K-A, but if the instrument, for example, check written to me had M-A-R-C-A, I could actually sign it correct with my M-A-R-K-A on the back in order to endorse it. So a bank endorsement is different from a blank endorsement. A bank may supply a missing endorsement on deposited instruments unless the instrument expressly requires a personal endorsement. Also, you may have multiple payees. So if you have an instrument that's made payable to A and B, that means it has to be endorsed by both A and B. If you have an instrument that says payable to A or B, it's called an alternative payee, and it can be endorsed by either. There is a difference here if there's an ambiguity. This rule that I have I need to add to it. So it depends on whether you have or you're dealing with the UCC. If you're dealing with the UCC and there's an ambiguity, so let's say it says pay to A-B on the front of the instrument, of the negotiable instrument. If it says pay to A-B, that's not clear whether it's a multiple or alternative. Under the UCC, if it's confusing, it's treated like a multiple payee, which means you need both or all signatures. Under the revised UCC, it's treated as an alternative payee, which means that the A-B under the revised UCC, you'd only need one signature. So that's something to think about. Now, how are parties classified? If an instrument is non-negotiable, the person is considered to be an assignee. So you could classify the parties. If you have a non-negotiable instrument, the person cannot be a holder. If the instrument is negotiable but does not run to that person, the person is also an assignee who holds that instrument. So if I have a check that says pay to John Jones, that instrument does not run to me because it's not payable to me. It's not a bearer instrument and it's not endorsed over to me. One of those might have made me a holder, but that's not the case. So if I hold it, I'm an assignee of that instrument. Or if the instrument does not have the words of negotiability, I'd be an assignee also of that instrument. If the instrument is negotiable and it runs to a person, this is a holder. So if there's a check made payable to Mark of Fleming, that instrument runs to me because it's made payable to me, and I'm also a holder of the instrument. How, again, do you make somebody how do you make the instrument run to a person? That it's either payable to them, this is making them a holder. It's a bearer instrument, or there's an endorsement that makes them either bearer or it's endorsed over to them. So the rights of ordinary holders are really no different from the rights of a contract assignee. So if there are no defenses that are asserted against the assignee or the holder, then they both are going to be entitled to payment. So holders and assignees are treated the same. If defenses are not asserted, they're going to get payment. The question comes up when defenses are asserted. So now we're going to look at the difference between a holder and a holder in due course. A holder in due course is a better position to be. A holder can be an ordinary holder, or a holder could be a holder in due course. Now, we got to distinguish between a holder and a holder in due course. A holder has only the rights given through the negotiable instrument. So a holder in due course has special rights. So where you really want to be is a holder in due course. Ordinary holders are subject to both limited and universal defenses, whereas holders in due course are subject only to universal defenses and not limited defenses. And when I say defenses, I mean that someone is claiming there's a reason they should not pay on that instrument. If no defenses are asserted, then holders, assignees, and holders in due course are going to be entitled to payment. So a holder in due course is not going to be subject to these limited defenses. These are limited defenses. Ordinary contract defenses, like breach of contract. If someone says that the contract was breached for goods and they're not going to pay, they would still have to pay a holder in due course. Incapacity, if someone's claiming that because they are a minor, they are not required to pay, that is a limited defense. It would not work to a holder in due course, but it would work to a holder and assignee. Fraud in the inducement, breach of warranty, duress consisting of threats, unauthorized completion, and theft of a bearer instrument are also limited defenses. So the universal defenses are all parties are subject to these defenses. So universal defenses may be asserted against all holders, including holders in due course. So fraud as to the essential nature would be a universal defense. Forgery or lack of authority, duress that deprives control, infancy and incapacity that makes the instrument void, illegality that makes the instrument void, and alteration of the instrument would be a universal defense. To be a holder in due course, the holder must first be a holder, acquire the instrument by proper negotiation, and they also have to give value for the instrument. Take the instrument in good faith without notice that the paper is overdue or dishonored, and without notice of defenses and adverse claims. Also, a party can be a holder through a holder in due course. This is called the shelter principle. So what that means is that if a party gets an instrument from a holder in due course when all the four elements of being an HDC have been met, that party gets the instrument as a holder in due course even without meeting all four elements. So it shelters them. So if I get an instrument from a holder in due course, I automatically become a holder in due course.